The practice of self-mummification, known as sokushinbutsu, was a grueling process undertaken by Buddhist monks in Japan to reach a higher state of enlightenment. Over several years, the monk would consume a strict diet of nuts, seeds, and poisonous lacquer tea made from the urushi tree, the same sap used to varnish pottery. This tea caused constant vomiting and sweating, effectively dehydrating the body and making the flesh toxic to maggots and bacteria. Once the monk felt death approaching, they would be buried alive in a stone tomb with only a small straw for air and a bell to ring daily. When the ringing stopped, the tomb was sealed, leaving a preserved mummy behind. In the late 18th and 19th centuries, the fear of being buried alive was so prevalent that it led to the invention of safety coffins. These elaborate caskets featured various mechanisms to allow a prematurely buried person to signal for help from underground. One popular design included a heavy cord tied to the deceased's hand that led to a bell on the surface of the graveyard. Watchmen were often hired to listen for any ringing during the night, though history suggests there are no verified accounts of a bell actually saving a person who had been accidentally interred. In the 1518 dancing plague of Strasbourg remains one of the most unsettling instances of mass hysteria in history. It began in Strasbourg when a woman named Frau Trophäa started dancing fervently in the street for no apparent reason. Within a month, hundreds of people had joined her, unable to stop their rhythmic movements. Local authorities, believing the afflicted needed to dance it out, constructed a wooden stage and hired musicians, but this only exacerbated the crisis. Many participants eventually collapsed and died from sheer exhaustion, strokes, or heart attacks, their bodies literally giving out while they remained in a trance-like state. In the late 19th century, a Parisian woman named Blanche Monnier vanished without a trace, only to be discovered 25 years later in a condition that redefined human endurance. She hadn't been kidnapped by a stranger, but by her own mother, who locked her in a tiny shuttered room to prevent her from marrying a penniless lawyer. When police finally stormed the attic in 1901, they found Blanche living in a literal sea of her own waste and rotting food scraps, weighing barely 55 pounds and terrified of the sunlight she hadn't seen in a quarter century. The vampire of Venice was not a creature of myth, but a forensic nightmare discovered in a mass grave of plague victims on the island of Nuovo Lazaretto. Archaeologists unearthed a female skull with a heavy brick wedged so forcefully into its jaw that it had shattered several teeth. This wasn't a form of post-mortem torture, but a desperate medical prevention method used by 16th-century Italians who believed in shroud eaters, corpses that supposedly rose to feed on their own shrouds to gain the strength to spread the Black Death.
History is littered with tragic oversights, but few are as hauntingly ironic as the death of Clement Vallandigham, a high-profile lawyer in 1871. While defending a man accused of murder in an Ohio courtroom, Vallandigham sought to prove that the victim had actually shot himself accidentally while drawing his weapon. To demonstrate his theory to the jury, he used what he believed was an unloaded pistol and performed a dramatic reenactment of the struggle. The gun was, in fact, loaded. Vallandigham shot himself in the abdomen and died the following day, successfully proving the accidental discharge theory. In 1999, forensic reconstruction revealed that the oldest human remains found in the Americas, an 11,500-year-old skull nicknamed Luzia, possessed features that were strikingly different from modern Native Americans. Discovered in a cave in Brazil, Luzia's skull morphology more closely resembled indigenous Australians or Africans, rather than the Siberian ancestors previously thought to be the first settlers of the continent. While recent DNA testing suggests her genetic roots are still linked to the original Siberian migrants, her distinct appearance remains a significant archaeological anomaly that challenges our understanding of early human migration patterns. Dr. Robert Liston, a 19th-century surgeon known for his incredible speed, is the only person in medical history to have performed a surgery with a 300% mortality rate. During a leg amputation that lasted only seconds, Liston's frantic pace caused him to accidentally slice off his assistant's fingers and slash the coat of a spectator. The patient and assistant both died of infections shortly after, and the spectator died of a heart attack on the spot, convinced he had been disemboweled by the surgeon's blade. The Kids for Cash scandal in Pennsylvania saw judges Mark Chiavarella and Michael Conahan accepting millions of dollars in kickbacks to send thousands of children to private, for-profit detention centers. Many of these children were first-time offenders who committed minor infractions such as mocking an assistant principal on social media or trespassing in a vacant building. The judges were eventually convicted in 2011, but the institutional betrayal left a permanent scar on the lives of over 2,000 juveniles whose futures were sold for a construction fee. In 1979, the Strelzik and Wetzel families successfully executed the Great Balloon Escape from East Germany by sewing together a massive makeshift hot air balloon from hundreds of scraps of nylon and bedsheets. They spent over a year secretly purchasing small amounts of fabric from various stores to avoid suspicion from the Stasi secret police, eventually constructing a balloon 90 feet tall. After one failed attempt that nearly led to their arrest, they launched at night and drifted over the heavily guarded border, landing in West Germany just as their propane fuel ran out.
In 1994, a woman named Gloria Ramirez was admitted to a California hospital, but she soon became known as the Toxic Lady after several medical staff members collapsed just by being near her. During treatment, nurses noticed a garlic-like odor and an oily sheen on her skin. When they drew her blood, it contained strange, man-made crystals. To this day, the exact chemical reaction that turned her body into a source of poisonous fumes remains a controversial medical mystery. In 1986, a rare natural disaster known as a limnic eruption occurred at Lake Nyos in Cameroon, effectively suffocating over 1,700 people and thousands of livestock in minutes. A massive cloud of carbon dioxide suddenly burst from the lake's depths, hugging the ground and displacing all oxygen in the surrounding valleys. Because the gas is colorless and odorless, victims often died in their sleep or mid-sentence, leaving behind an eerie, untouched landscape of perfectly preserved homes and silent streets. The Tully monster, or Tully monstrum, is a 300-million-year-old fossil found in Illinois that looks so bizarre scientists still can't agree on what it actually was. It possessed eyes on the ends of long horizontal stalks and a mouth located at the tip of a long trunk-like appendage. Despite having thousands of specimens to study, researchers are split on whether it was a vertebrate like a lamprey or an invertebrate related to snails, making it one of the most frustrating orphans in the tree of life. Exploding head syndrome, or EHS, is a sensory disorder where a person hears a massive imaginary noise, like a bomb detonating or a gunshot, right as they are falling asleep or waking up. While physically harmless, the experience is so vivid and terrifying that many sufferers believe they are having a stroke or an aneurysm. Scientists believe it occurs when the brain's shutdown sequence for sleep glitches, causing a sudden massive burst of neural activity in the auditory cortex instead of a gradual transition. Dr. Charles Scudder, a former professor, built a handcrafted castle called Corpsewood Manor in the Georgia woods to live a life of seclusion, only to meet a tragic end. In 1982, Two men who believed Scudder was a millionaire broke in, but after finding no hidden treasure, they murdered Scudder and his partner. The irony remains that Scudder, who was fascinated by the macabre and had even painted a portrait of himself with 5 bullet holes in his head years prior, died in almost the exact manner he had artistically envisioned.